Zach Subar. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Can you
Yes,
see me?
I can see you.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
I can hear you and I can see you. And welcome, everyone. My name is Alan Samuel Cohen, and you have arrived at the EQ Advantage interview broadcast. I'm here with my pal, Zach Subar, and this is the second interview that I've done today because today is a super important day. Today is actually our kickoff of the EQ series. So let me tell you a little bit about who I am. Then we'll talk about our topic. I'll introduce our guest, and we're going to have a really engaging conversation and a different perspective on an age-old problem, which is about how to make the best decisions. As I said, my name is Alan Samuel Cohen. I am an executive coach and a leadership and team consultant. I use emotional intelligence, which is the EQ, and EQ, emotional quotient, and all of the work that I do. And the EQ Advantage interview series is my opportunity to sit down with some really great, visionary, inspiring men, leaders in their own communities in all different fields. Some are coaches, some aren't, but they all have important messages and want a platform to be able to share their thoughts and their inspiration. So I'm happy to provide that. We're going to be doing a whole bunch of interviews this week, and then we'll be going to a weekly interview. And I am super excited to introduce my guest, Zach Subar, who is going to be talking about how to break into your comfort zone. Notice I said into your comfort zone, not out of your comfort zone, into your comfort zone, and how to make your best decisions. So welcome, Zach.
Hi, Alan. How are you? It's great to be here.
Great to have you here. And Zach, you and I have known each other for a long time. We actually met at a landmark education. I'm at a loss for words. At a landmark education thing. What was it?
Yeah, it was right. An advanced course.
And the advanced course, and we got to know each other. And Zach is just an amazing guy. He's a writer and editor, and he aspires to influence people in deep and meaningful ways with his work. By day, he works as a transportation planner. He's my first transportation planner. I've never known a transportation planner before, Zach. And in that job, he manages transit projects in New York City region that affect thousands of daily transit riders and commuters. I've got some questions for Zach about transportation and commuting amidst the coronavirus. He's got some thoughts about that. Zach is now developing and promoting a TEDx talk that focuses on decision-making and on the surprising way that we can learn to make better decisions. And previously, Zach worked as a news editor and reporter, where he fell in love with telling stories and sharing his content with a wide audience. He currently regularly writes short-form scripts and sketches and is in the process of developing his first novel. Welcome, Zach.
Yes, it's great to be here.
And for those of you who are joining live, I would love for you to put in the comments where you're visiting us from, where you're located. And for those of you who are watching this on replay, put hashtag replay. We'd love to know who has tuned in to our broadcast today. So Zach, before we get into the topic itself, tell us a little bit about yourself that off of the page, off of the bio that I shared, some of your hobbies, your interests, how you became a transit planner, all those good things, a little color.
Yeah, sure. So really, I was as you mentioned, I was working as a writer, editor, reporter. I've always been someone who's loved maps. You know, I was that kid in the car who always knew the directions to places, probably annoyingly, honestly. I always had that interest, but I didn't really explore it too much in my life, except for, having Google Maps open on my computer probably a little too often. And so that, and also as I was covering news, I was covering a lot of local planning issues. And I sort of said maybe I could make a career out of that. I was looking for potential career change. It seemed like something that was up my alley, sort of the combination of maps and the coverage I was doing. decided to pursue it. Got my master's in city and regional planning from Rutgers University. And I've really been working professionally in the field now for 6 years.
Awesome.
Um,
And Zach, where do you live? And
I live in central New Jersey, and I work for New Jersey Transit. So that's the transit agency in New Jersey, basically covers the whole state.
we know it well. We know
Yes,
it well.
I'm sure you do. Hopefully positively.
All good. And hobbies and interests and.
Yeah. So I am I would say I'm a big athlete. I've biked across the country twice. I've run a few marathons. But really that's sort of like the highlights, but really it's just more the day-to-day that I really enjoy, and it's definitely a big part of my life.
And I did not know that you were a news reporter. So were you a broadcaster or
I was writing. I was working for a print newspaper first, and then I worked for an online local news website called patch.com. That's something you might have heard of. Yeah.
and you're working on a book now. I didn't realize that either.
Yeah, so that's in development now. That's sort of in character development. Yeah, maybe we'll hear more about that as we go forward.
Right.
But that's really in development now, and that's another sort of big project of mine.
Well, you're a very complex guy. I know you're also very, very connected to your faith and to Judaism, and I want to talk a little bit about that as well. And I want to say that there's a little guy in my life. He's 7 years old, and I know that he is dying to meet you because his aspirations are to be some kind of a transit planner or city.
Wow.
He's fascinated by everything with wheels and buses and trains. And
Usually those kids that can't put down their toy trains who become the transit planners, and then they play with real trains.
That's right. Well,
Yeah.
that's the first thing that he goes to whenever he gets home. So
Yeah, I'll see him working there. When I'm close to retired, I'll probably see him. So.
yeah, I hope you'll hook him up.
Yeah.
So let's So first, one of the theme of all of these programs are real men, real talk. So we're going to get real, but before we do that, I'd love to just get your definition of what you think a real man is.
A real man to me is someone who can be fully expressed emotionally to the extent that they feel comfortable, really, not to tie it into what we're going to talk about with comfort zones. But, that means different things for different people. For some people, that might mean a lot of tears. For some people, that might mean going inward. Obviously it means a lot of different things to different people. But for a man to be fully expressed and to not sort of allow what sort of that prototype of what a man is, doesn't share his emotions and so on. A real man is someone who is able to kind of put those emotions on the table in whatever way he does, whether that's strong and silent or some other way, and really put it out there and share and be upfront and open and not be afraid of sort of repercussions that might come from that in terms of violating some sort of societal norm that comes with that. But again, that means different things for different people.
Yeah. There's like a little delay when I ask a question, so I got wait to catch up.
Okay.
So what are so how have you come to understand what a man is? What have been some of the more positive role models for you, and what's inspired you to embrace that?
I think back now, it's funny you mentioned it. I think back to some of the big life moments, whether that's a graduation, whether that's leaving sleepaway camp or something like that, whether it's, being with family in a certain way or something. I think about those big life moments and how a lot of times those are the moments when whatever emotions were sort of trying to be controlled, it's not really possible anymore. And when I've seen a leader, I'm thinking of one sort of particular leader I had. My mind goes back to sleepaway camp, which was, when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
And think of one leader who just was very open about how special it was, and brought everyone in, and everyone was in tears. And that's something that's common in a situation where you leave your friends, but he sort of made it okay.
Yeah.
And that was something that was really powerful to me. When you see people who are comfortable doing that, and all up to, when you see Barack Obama crying for his daughters, and
Yeah.
things like that, being
Yeah.
able to really, it doesn't always come through crying, but just
Yeah.
sort of no bones about it when you put it out there like that. Those are a few different ways.
Yeah, no, it sounds like vulnerability was really encouraged at
Yeah.
a very early age, where a lot of us who may be older than you, just sort of, having a different orientation, were, um, uh, there was a little more of that sort of man up, certainly in like camp settings and all that,
Sure, and I definitely, I've been part of that too, and it's taken time to kind of get, and I'm still on the journey, but it's taken time. But yeah, it's something that I can really appreciate, and that I feel that's connected to what you're asking.
Yeah, that's awesome, and I'm glad that you touched on a little bit about emotion and emotional intelligence too. Zach participates in one of my group programs, the EQ Advantage, where we're exploring emotional intelligence and all the different aspects of emotional intelligence in terms of how it can help us or hinder us, but particularly how it can help us in moving aspects of our life or our business forward. And so I hope that we'll touch a little bit upon decision making, particularly, and assertiveness in relationship to emotional intelligence and the topic today. So Zach, so the topic that you wanted to speak about, and I'm delighted that you did, was about about how we make our best decisions, but particularly breaking into our comfort zone, which is such a radical way of approaching decision making, given how so many of us are encouraged to stretch and to break out of our comfort zone and push our edges and really sort of that's very much the common a common principle that we're, if we're not pushing ourselves, we're not growing, etc. And so I'm really curious what what intrigued you about this as a topic. And I don't know, I've got a whole bunch of other questions.
Sure. Yeah. So you mentioned sort of the emotional part of it. One of the things that I've been exploring in sort of emotional analysis and intelligence is problem solving. I'm someone who definitely struggles with that. People who know me well will tell you that I'm someone who beats a decision to a pulp, makes a decision, goes back on it, tortures himself really over a decision. So that when I sort of realized, and after sort of taking an EQ test and scoring pretty low on the problem solving area, that was sort of what I always knew. I was sort of struggled a lot with decisions, but and with sort of, it's connected to fear of missing out as well. But that was sort of what encouraged me to kind of start exploring the topic. Once I started exploring the topic, and that was done through just free writing and so on, I started to sort of write down what are some of the big decisions that I've made in my life. And I would encourage everyone to do this activity. It's been really productive to me. Anyone listening, I think it's just do it. It's great. The thing that was revealed to me, and I wouldn't have come to this on my own, it was just revealed through the writing, was that all of the big decisions that I've made in my life, there's been an element of comfort. Even the ones that seem really big on the surface, which they were, there was always that element of comfort. I decided a couple years ago to leave my job for 4 months and to travel to Israel to study, which was, first of all, terrifying. And do I even want to ask? Whatever. It was you can imagine someone who has a hard time making decisions. But it was Israel, which is a place that I'm very familiar with, and I have a lot of family. And so at the end of the day, it wasn't so, there was a familiarity there. There was a comfort element to making a huge decision. So that was sort of, I started to notice, all my big decisions have this element of comfort. How can I sort of explore that better? And that's sort of where it came from.
Yeah, and what do you, I think that in one of our earlier discussions, you said also that generally, like, you're making decisions all the time in your work.
Yeah.
But so what are the decisions for you personally that tend to be more difficult? And what are the ones that tend to be easier for you?
Yeah, the ones at work tend to not get me quite as much. Maybe that's because I'm part of a team, and the team, I have the support of the team, and it's a collaborative effort, and it doesn't all rest on me. At the end of the day, I think a good team player would, and I'm thankful, I'm very lucky to work with a good team, and the people who are my supervisors it's a very collaborative group. And, I think that makes it easier that I know that there's collaboration. That's really nice. So those decisions aren't the hardest for me. The hardest ones for me are the ones that involve, they're both big and small, They might even involve, I get stressed out if I'm cooking dinner, and like, if I'm cooking for people, like, I have to get the right recipe, but I don't want this one. I do want this one, but then I have to go to this store and that store. So it goes from there. And that, to me, strangely enough, is more stressful than a decision that involves you $1 million project in a transit project, which is,
Right.
It's just funny, And then it's also the decisions in life that are, where am I going to live? Who am I going to, be around? Things like that. Those are the decisions that have been the most difficult for me. And that's where I'm really trying to apply this principle of being in my comfort zone.
Yeah. So what is it about being within the confines of your comfort zone that can help you make the best decisions? And also, I would love for you to get like a little, I don't know if the word is angry, but sort of push back a little bit on that idea that, that if you're not stretching outside of your comfort zone, you're not growing.
So I'm going to encourage everyone to, you almost don't even have to, but just Google TED Talk comfort zone, and you'll get 30 or something, some variation on it. Not to say that's not a valuable thing, but, there's this strong societal idea. How many times have you heard, the better question is, how many times today have you heard someone say you should get out of your comfort zone? Because people are always saying it, and you'll start to notice it. I know, Alan, you said that once we started talking about this topic, you start to notice that people are always talking about that.
Yeah, exactly. No pain, no gain, right?
No pain, no gain, and so on. Right. And so, yeah, I really do want to push back on that idea. Not to say that getting out of your comfort zone is always a bad thing, because there's a time and place to get out of your comfort zone for sure. It's just this idea that you always have to get out of your comfort zone to be your best self. If decisions that you make involve an element of comfort zone that can be positive, then why not sort of think about, okay, what can I accomplish and stretch my comfort zone, and for sure stretch and push yourself to who you should be. And that does involve an element of pushing, but we have a comfort zone and then we have a panic zone, right? So do we want to be in that panic zone? Right now as a society, we are in that panic zone. And I think it's important now to sort of have a thought, like maybe what we need right now is a little bit more of a comfort zone. I also just want to say a lot of what is involved with a comfort zone, I find that guilt is associated with a lot of it. Because there's such this societal pressure to get out of your comfort zone, sometimes you think to yourself, oh, well, I should do this. I should make this big decision. If I don't, I'm a failure. I failed. I didn't go for it. I didn't do this. I didn't make that move. I didn't do that. There's an idea, and I heard this from a rabbi, his name is Rabbi Dov Ber-Pinson, that there's actually no word in biblical Hebrew for guilt. There's a word for shame, there's a word for regret, and regret can be a positive emotion. This is all from him. Regret can be a positive emotion because, it might encourage you to do something that you didn't get a chance to do. But guilt, and the way he sees it, is guilt is not actually a positive emotion. So with that, so when you're making a decision, really check yourself. Is guilt what is driving me here? to sort of and have this idea that I need to break out of my comfort zone. And if it's guilt that's driving you, you might want to rethink sort of how you're approaching that decision.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was in a conversation with someone the other day who said that, was talking about how in in our pushing ourselves outside of our comfort zone because somebody, often it's because somebody has told us we need to, right? There are a lot of
Yeah.
coaches out there who are telling you, that, no pain, no gain, as we said, that we're often missing an opportunity to tap more into our own intuition and our own creativity. And we're also sometimes bypassing that need for comfort, which is, for those psychology geeks out there, right? It's like, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like there's we have a need to feel safe and to feel comfortable. And so,
Yeah.
so to always be swinging for the fences, to always be making ourselves uncomfortable, it also sounds like, that could be kind of exhausting, right?
Exhausting. And I would even go so far as to say that maybe we can even make better decisions if we're more comfortable, which is for sure not conventional wisdom. But I would, that's something that I think is very worth exploring for people.
Yeah. So tell me more about that. That's interesting.
Well, I think it's an idea that could potentially bring reassurance to people. If you have this, and we may not even notice that we have this idea in our mind, it might be subconscious. A lot of the things that are the messaging we get is subconscious, right? But it might be a thing where we need to sort of have that sort of soothing element to our decision making and to how we're living, and to say, you know what, like, not that it's okay to stay where you are, and I would never say that. We always should be growing, and that's a huge part of life. At the same time, we need to be able to have a little bit of, potentially in certain situations, in many situations, need to have a little bit of reassurance in order to allow ourselves to explore the big things that we want to explore. If we have that bit of reassurance, maybe we will be more willing to make that big leap. Whereas we might turn off completely if we're in that panic zone, and then we don't grow at all.
Yeah. So I'm going to pause you for a second. So I'm not checking the comments. It's hard to go back and forth. I find because I'm listening attentively. But I'd love for you, for folks who are listening, to put in the comments what you think about this idea of really breaking into your comfort zone. Maybe more exploring the expanse of your comfort zone, and what you think about that. The kind of the pushback on the idea of always pushing yourself beyond it. I know Zach is interested in hearing what folks have to say, so do put it in the comments, and Zach, I'm sure, will want to respond. So, so Zach, what's an example of a decision? Maybe it's the one that you shared already. Maybe there's another, of a decision you've made where the reassurance of being within your comfort zone helped you.
Right. So I mentioned the decision about Israel earlier. That was definitely one.
Yeah.
Another one was when I moved to New Jersey. I had a few options of where I was going to move. First of all, to make the decision to go to school and move to a new place. And a lot of us make moves in life, for sure. At the same time, I had a choice between moving to New Jersey and moving to North Carolina. North Carolina, a place that I don't have so many connections. New Jersey, a place where I have more. I lived here previously. And at the end of the day, I was weighing graduate school programs and the benefits of this and the benefits of that. At the end of the day, the reason why I believe the reason why I decided to come here was because there was an element of familiarity in the location, even though I hadn't been living there. There was an element of familiarity in that location, and in sort of knowing that even though it was a big leap and a new experience, and like coming from one place to another, I had that familiarity. Now, that's not to say that if I had moved to North Carolina, it would have been bad. It could have been good. It would have been, maybe there would have been some element of, if I had decided to do that, though, I probably would have tried to find something that would have allowed me to find some familiarity, whether that was Jewish community or running community or something like that. I think we all go to that place. Yeah. And I'll just note that, there was a story when I was I spent a bit of time in China leading outdoor trips, and there was one situation where I was leading a group of kids alone, and I had basically thought, like, I can handle it, it's fine, not realizing that I didn't know how to read Chinese and I couldn't really read the map we were doing. And it basically was a disaster. We were hiking in the dark, and it ended up being fine. I was in my panic zone there, and I didn't realize it. So sort of, the it's paved with good intentions, right? But you want to be careful about, and this isn't just about me. There are examples throughout society where going beyond your comfort zone has not led to positive results.
Yeah, what are some of those other examples that come to mind?
Yeah, so one for sure is sort of to go the planning route. You have probably some of you have heard of Robert Moses, who was a never elected but very influential political figure in New York City. The earlier part of the century through the 50s, 60s, died in the 70s. But he basically, pretty much any road, highway that you see in New York City now, he's responsible for. Brooklyn Battery Tunnel and Staten Island Expressway. Yeah. So sort of his most infamous project is the Cross Bronx Expressway. That's the highway that goes cuts a wedge through the South Bronx, and really basically destroyed a community there. He was a big driver. He really liked cars, and he basically said, I don't care, the people are collateral damage, and I'm going to put a highway through this community, which, other places, as interstates were being built across the country, people were trying to do that in other places, and there were successful protests against it in places like Baltimore and in other places. But driving a car and putting a highway might have been in Robert Moses's comfort zone,
Right.
but it was certainly not in society's comfort zone.
Right. So that's kind of a cool way of thinking about it too. While it might be great for you to stretch yourself outside of your comfort zone, if it's a decision that's going to impact others, being mindful of their comfort zone is important, right? Because
Exactly.
there are a lot of people out there who are less are more averse to risk for very good reasons.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's important to realize that the comfort zone can be something as small as, I don't know why my mind kept going to Cheryl Strayed, who wrote the book Wild. And, basically there's a movie with Reese Witherspoon about her trip. And basically she was in the lowest of the low place and decided to drop everything and hike the Pacific Crest Trail without much experience. And she made it. And so I haven't found anything, I kind of looked into her a little bit. I haven't found anything that she did that seemed like it was in her comfort zone. But, maybe just putting on a pack and having that sort of hug, might have been enough to sort of make her feel like she was comforted somehow.
Yeah, like it isn't always about like a quantum leap. Like sometimes it's just like an iterative, just like a small step that will stretch you in a way that it doesn't put you into your panic zone, but it's still growing new neural passageways. It's not putting you into your fight or flight response, and and it feels good because it'll give you a sense of accomplishment.
Absolutely, yeah.
So how could someone integrate this idea into their day-to-day life?
So a few different ways. One, I would encourage them to value test any decision that they make. Really think about the decision and write out some of the factors that are going along with it. If a pro-con list works for you, that's fine. I know that's a common thing that many people do. But I would really look at what in this decision is familiar and what is not. That's the way I would think about integrating this particular topic in. And really looking at, if you make the list and there's nothing familiar, and like I said, it can be something as simple as like a backpack or something, or something as simple as stuffed animal. I don't know, it could be anything. But at the end of the day, if you don't have any of that, I'm not going to sit here and say that it's a bad decision, because there's a time and place to get out of your comfort zone, but you might want to evaluate it from that perspective. Another thing that I would say is that you really do want to assess the role of guilt. How is guilt playing into this?
Yeah.
Is guilt the reason I'm making that decision? We saw earlier, is guilt is not, it's not so positive. I don't view it as
right. So like, are we doing it because our friends want us to do it with them?
That's correct.
And it's, and it's more about them than about us. And we're both Jewish, so we know a few things about guilt, right?
Right. And that's the funny thing. Like, there's this idea of Jewish guilt, but I've sort of been thinking about this a lot more lately. I think it's a societal construct. It's not the authentic thing.
Yeah, well, and you talked about the fear of missing out and all those things that come into play. And I actually do. I want to share some on a personal note. I'm somebody who has always stretched myself, and I've always put myself in uncomfortable situations, constantly. And I got to tell you, at the ripe old age of 59, I'm kind of exhausted.
Yeah.
I'm a little tired of constantly pushing and proving and trying and experimenting. And there's something really beautiful for me. It's actually it's a stranger feeling than anything, is to just actually stay in what's familiar and what I know.
Right.
And and it's a nurturing, kind of loving gift I'm giving to myself, to not constantly feel like I have to keep up with everybody else who is out to crush, kill, and destroy. I just have I'm tired.
Get tired, and that's fine. It's okay to be okay.
Yeah, I'm loving your advice. So I have a few more questions. We have a few more minutes, and I don't know if you're seeing the chat. If anybody's asking questions, I'm not sure. It's hard for me to walk, check questions, and chew gum at the same time. I'm just not that type. So I want to talk about your faith, right? So we've had conversations about Judaism and some of your interest, even in possibly pursuing a rabbinical path, and and what are some of the things that you've learned from Judaism around this topic, or really any, I just love to know more. I love to know more about people's spiritual religious connection and how it affects their day to day.
I think about, I mentioned earlier the backpack, right? And as we were talking about sort of emotional elements and bringing those in, I think, the Judaism, when I sort of started on my sort of journey towards becoming, whatever journey it was, to sort of taking on more sort of elements of traditional observance, the first thing, there's something called tefillin, which is phylacteries in English, where you basically wrap it around your arm and you put it on your head every morning. It's part of your prayer. And that was the first thing that I reconnected to when I was sort of going through my journey, because it was like a wrapping, it was like something, it was like a hug, and that was really nice. And that was comforting, in a similar vein, there's a holiday called Sukkot, where we sit in these sort of huts outside. We're really supposed to eat our meals for basically a week in these huts outside. And some people sleep in them, and it's in the fall, it's maybe a little chilly. So you would think that would be very out of your comfort zone. However, if it's raining, you actually you have no obligation to be in that sukkah, is what it's called. The hut is called a sukkah. So there's an element of comfort there, and so I find that within Judaism, there are all these little markers of where you could look at it from the outside and see it as sort of this a lot of laws and hard to understand and so on, and I sort of see it as these little markers of familiarity that are really just there for you to kind of hold your hands and be there with you. And I think that's really nice.
I love that. I love that. From the sublime to the reality. So I wanted to ask you a question because you know, a lot of people tuning in are from the New York, New Jersey, tri-state area, and you know, you're a planner and you're dealing in transportation. There's a lot of concern right now in terms of people's decision-making processes about like getting on the subway or getting on the New Jersey Transit, or what do you have to say to people about what can help them and their making them feel better or safer about their decisions?
Yeah, so there's a reason why, you know, we're still not encouraging everyone to get back. That's from a social distancing perspective for sure. On New Jersey Transit, you know, we're back to regular weekday service. That said, the trains are not full and they really shouldn't be yet. Those of you who live in New York, as Alan told me before, the subways have never been cleaner.
And empty.
And empty, right. So enhanced cleaning protocols are there for sure. I think one thing we all have to keep in mind is that you do have to think about risk associated with public transit, for sure. And you have to be careful and you know, there's a lot of surfaces, a lot of people around, you know, you're required to wear a mask, which everyone should be wearing a mask. You know, it's a very big mask person for sure. At the same, so I don't want to say at the same time, I think it's important for people to realize something we forget sometimes, that driving a car is not all, you know, cars are inherently in some ways unsafe themselves. We all sort of know this, and we all do it though. And so it's important to keep that in mind too, as we're sort of making decisions associated with public transit and as things come back. I think one of the big benefits of, you know, one sort of, you know, silver line you can take in this whole terrible situation, it's all terrible, is some of the open streets that have come out in New York, you know, closing off streets to cars. You really start to see the neighborhood grow around that. That's a really nice thing. And something that really, to take back a neighborhood for pedestrians, it's just a more pleasant and vibrant, active place.
Thank you for that. A little public service announcement. Important. Before we close out and let people know how they can be in touch with you, anything that you wish that I had asked you that you want to address, or do we skip over anything important to you?
Yeah, no, I would just say that, you know, I think that, you know, if you are really someone who struggles with making decisions, you know, that it's okay to have, you know, it's all okay that it doesn't have to feel so huge or so restrictive. I don't know why my mind always goes to something like karaoke. Like, it's something that like a lot of people love and a lot of people hate. And a lot of times it's like, you gotta go, you gotta sing. And like, you don't go.
You don't.
So,
you don't, because it could really be terrible. It could.
It won't be fun. It won't be good for you. And I did see there were a few questions in the chat. So,
good.
What
you got there?
Let's see. One of them. So from my Aunt Jane, do you think that good decision making might be a combination of comfort zone and moving beyond comfort zone? I do think that. I think that's where the idea of stretching your comfort zone comes in, where it shouldn't be fully panic, but it should be that important combination, that balance, right? And to remember that that your comfort zone is there for a reason, that it's important it's there for you and it's helping you. Even though you can't rely on it, because you can't let it drag you down, and drag you down to, you know, there's a very strong sort of, I would say, faith-based idea, definitely a Jewish idea of we all have our purpose in the world. So
well, no, I'm glad that you mentioned that. And thank you, Aunt Jane, for the question. I was thinking about, you know, the value of having a safety net in place sometimes. Like, what's the worst thing that could happen if I make this decision, but then also knowing sometimes when, because something is so important to you, that you can use your faith and your intuition as a guide. And
Right.
even if
Yeah.
there isn't a safety net necessarily that's obvious to you, but maybe faith is your safety net in some ways. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I definitely, and it's can be a big thing, having meaning and so on.
Yeah, I love it. Right, you
And
were talking
then,
about Viktor Frankl, right? In Search of Meaning,
sure.
that book, which was such a.
Yeah, yeah.
And were there other questions
There's
there?
one more
Okay, good.
from my friend Perry. How do you know the boundary of one's comfort zone? Oof, it's a tough question. I would say it's that place where you just start to get that level of like your heart's beating a little. Like it's physical, actually. I would say. Pay attention to how your body reacts, and yeah, and that's where pay attention to how your body reacts and how you start to do you feel a little trepidation, and a little trepidation is such a good thing.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't be panic. But
Yeah.
that's really where the boundary starts, I would say.
No, that's great. And I also think that it's useful to even journal on it, to journal on what emotions are coming up when you're thinking about making that tough decision. Begin to use your emotional intelligence to give you more input and more insight, so that you're not necessarily acting off of an emotion, but you become more mindful of what emotions come into play, whether it's guilt, it's guilt or shame or whatever it is that's coming up, to just notice it and reflect on it and not necessarily act on it right in an impulsive way.
Yeah, definitely. So it's really important.
Good. Well, let me before we sign off. So first of all, Zach, thank you so much for being a guest. Zach, I know you're going to be on a TEDx stage talking about this topic at some point. If anybody's listening and has a TEDx connection they want to share with Zach, please, by all means, we're rooting for him to get this message out there into the world. I think it's so important right now, in particular, where people need to find more comfort in their decision making, because things are so uncertain and so uncomfortable. And a couple of different. So Zach, how can people get in touch with you other than Facebook?
Yeah,
You want to
Facebook
share an
works.
email address?
My email address is ZACH, H as in Harry, .SUBAR at gmail.com.
Awesome. And Facebook, right?
And Facebook works, Zach Subar. I do have a Twitter, ZSubs. So ZSUBES is my Twitter. And then I actually just got an Instagram with that same ZSubs, ZSUBES.
I like it.
So,
I just got banned from Twitter. I have no idea why.
really?
Yeah. I'm so not political on Twitter, and I'm in Twitter prison.
I feel like you can do something that the algorithm just picks up on, and it's not fair.
Don't know. And for you all, for folks out there, if you're interested in learning more about emotional intelligence and how it impacts our decision making and other aspects of our life, feel free to reach out to me via Facebook or at alan@alansamuelcohen.com. And for the fellows out there, I have a EQ Advantage Facebook group. That's for men who are coaches or consultants or solopreneurs. If you want to engage in conversations around men and emotional intelligence, we'd love to have you there. So feel free to reach out to Facebook EQ Advantage. Zach, thank you so much. Great to have you today. And we will be back on Wednesday with another great interview, Wednesday evening with Rob Tull. We're going to be talking about family and success and vision and all sorts of great things there. So thank you, Zach.
Thank you so much. It was really nice to be here for the opportunity.
Have a great day.
You too. All right.